Hello, and welcome to the mentorDINO podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin Rosier. I am an architect and founder of mentorDINO. Join me each week as I speak with amazing professionals in and around the architecture, engineering, and construction industry, as we are all part of a larger interconnected community. We discuss everything from career stories, lessons learned, and advice for others finding their own unique career path. Thank you to all of our current subscribers, and if you're new, welcome to the conversation. And if you like this episode, please do me a favor by hitting subscribe, like, or share it with a friend. It really helps others be able to discover this resource and support them on their own unique career journey. On today's episode of the mentorDINO podcast, I would like to welcome back to the podcast Katerina Burianova, owner and architect of Katerina Burianova Architects, and the host of From the Honeycomb podcast. And she's out in Orange County, California. Yes. So thank you so much, Katerina, for coming on the podcast again.
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast again. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so this episode, we're going to be focusing a lot more on your entrepreneurial journey, starting your own firm, and really diving into the business side of architecture. Mm-hmm. But if anybody missed the first episode, hasn't seen your podcast, do you mind doing a little introduction of yourself to let my listeners know about your education and career?
Of course. So, excuse me. Of course. So my career, I guess I've always wanted to be an architect since I was about 10 years old. And I pursued architecture at the Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago. I did their 5-year program there, spent 2 more years in Chicago, and the winters really got to me. I'm someone who grew up in Southern California, although I'm originally from the Czech Republic. And after that 7th winter, I was like, you know what? This has been great. Chicago, I'm moving back home to California. So I made the move back to California, where I worked at a firm at a small coastal town. And while I was working there, I got licensed. I got my license fall of 2022, incorporated February of 2023 to start my own company. And by May of 2023, I was let go. And June 1st, which as of this recording, when we're recording a couple days ago, I celebrated it'll be my 3-year anniversary. So I'm going into my 3rd year of business now, which is exciting. So that's kind of a quick little snippet. And I know on my last episode, we talked a lot about Vastu Shastra, which is something that I am still interested in. It's something I don't really offer with my business anymore, but Vastu Shastra is a Vedic science similar to like feng shui. So if listeners go back to that episode, they'll hear me talk a lot about Vastu. Although it's not something I'm offering anymore, it is something that was near and dear to me at that time. And it's just something I still incorporate when I'm working around my house and doing some designs. But I'm definitely more focused on helping other architects start their own firm now.
Yeah. And I'm sure if anybody has any questions on Vastu, they could always poke you because it is a passion of yours.
Yeah.
It's hard to get you to stop.
Yeah.
And I know I want to dive into 2 things because you got your license and immediately started the process of starting your own firm. And I know for some professionals, there may be some imposter syndrome or I'm not good enough if they get licensed early on in their career or what experience they have. So can you explain a little bit how you felt during that time and deciding to start taking those steps?
No, of course. So I got licensed at the end of October of 2022. Then we had the holidays, and I was already having a conversation with my husband about, okay, well, now I'm licensed. I'm itching to want to start my own firm. But then the biggest question everybody always has is like, when? When should I do it? And how should I go about it? And so I was working at a firm where the firm owner was he still is, was in his early 80s at that time. And so we had already had the conversation with my boss, even like in the past, I'd mentioned, one day I want to have my own firm. So it wasn't a surprise when in January, he and I sat down and I said, we actually kind of had a spur of the moment conversation. And he said, what's your plan like now that you're licensed? So we kind of had this conversation of, I said, I'd like to start my own firm, possibly go part-time. So we had that initial conversation with my boss. So I always made sure to be transparent with him on my plans as well. I ended up having a coffee date with my mentor that same month, asked him, how did he start his business? And I kind of already knew I wanted to be a corporation, which is something in the state of California, architects cannot be an LLC or an LLP. So my two options, well, three, I guess, is sole proprietor, S Corp, or C Corp. Did not want to be a sole proprietor because just wanted that like level of protection with a corporation. And then S Corp, and don't quote me, I'm not an accountant, but S Corp, I do know you get better tax benefits than an C Corp. So, and that's also for my ARE studying days. I remember like S Corp and C Corp. So I knew I was wanting to be a corporation. Now, thankfully, I already knew the process of becoming a corporation because my husband, he's a general contractor. That previous August, he incorporated his business. So I got to watch him go through the paperwork. I went to our accountant's office with him. I also, as his wife, had to sign some papers, knowing, I guess, in the state of California, your spouse legally has to know when you're setting up corporations. So there's little bits of that. So when I was there, though, I asked questions because I knew that was, the path I was leading on. So even before I was licensed, I was already starting to kind of put it together in my head, but I just wasn't sure when. And so January of 2023, I'd had the conversation with my boss, with my husband, with my mentor, and was like, okay, let's just get incorporated. Let me just set up. Who knows how long that's going to take. So February I got incorporated, and then I knew I need to work on a website. I need to work on business cards. Why don't I just keep doing that while I'm already still working for someone? So there was did I answer your question? I feel like I think I did at this point, did I?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just want to let listeners know a little bit, if they haven't set up a business,
Yes.
you can be a sole proprietor as an architect, but
Yes.
that protection that you mentioned is
Mhm.
protection of your assets.
Yes.
So if somebody were to come after you, if you're a sole proprietor, they could come after your house, your car, anything you own. Whereas soon as if you can have an LLC or a professional LLC in other states, or a full-on S Corp or C Corp, that
Mhm.
gives you that protection that anybody, if they come after you for any reason, they can't come after your personal assets. So
Exactly.
just a
Exactly.
little bit in case anybody's curious and starting
Thank
their
you.
own.
No, thank you for sharing that little bit. That's the part where I'm always like, yeah, there you need to, and that's most of the architects I talk to who have their own firm outside of California are LLCs. And I know that's
Mhm.
an easier setup. So that's why for me, I do have a corporation. There's just that more step because California just has its more hoops it likes to give to business owners.
Yeah, I know mentorDINO is an LLC, and there's better tax benefits as
Yeah.
a corporation, but then you have to make sure you're giving yourself a salary. And
Yeah.
that can be really scary whenever you're starting a firm and not knowing, okay, is money going to come in the door? What
Yeah.
projects am I going to get? So an LLC is a little bit more of that general protection because you can still
Mhm.
pay yourself like a sole proprietor and just owner contributions or payouts as you get them or not get them as you
Gotcha.
start. So at least that's what I found. So anybody can
Okay.
correct us if we're wrong.
Yes.
We're not accountants.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's important that you sat through those steps with your husband, because it's not
Mhm.
till you go through it based on your particular state, because every state has their own process
Mhm.
and who you got to talk to. And then you also have the licensing board as well. So talking
Yeah.
back and forth between the state and the board is like shuffling papers across the hallway.
It is. It really is.
Yeah, I know when I had to turn in like a permit set in Cleveland, like somebody's like, good luck, you're going to be there for 3 hours. And it's literally like you took the same papers to like 5 different doors. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the worst.
Yeah.
Like,
Very
but
outdated. No, same California. There's one document you have to send that says if you're licensed, what firm are you associated with? And it's
mm,
only you can only mail it in. And so I had no paper trail of it when I was looking for it earlier this year. And I'm just like, oh, that's right. I mailed it in like snail mail. And it's just like
uh-huh.
everything else is digital. It's very interesting when it comes to all the paperwork and filing.
Yeah. And you're entering year 3. So
Mhm.
how are you feeling now that you've gotten to this point?
I'm feeling very good, like grateful. I definitely feel like the timing of everything, there's that everything happens for a reason. And I know in the moment when I was let go of, which wasn't according to the plan, my boss and I had previously discussed, I ended up getting let go with 2-week notice and then starting, working in June. But I'm grateful for everything has happened the way it has happened. I started the work on my business early on. I've been putting in work. My first year was just incredible. I'm so grateful to everybody who, took me on as an architect with like, I had no previous clients, nothing like that. I'm really grateful for how that all transpired and really all of the lessons I've been learning along the way and where I am now. I just signed 2 projects in 1 week, which I haven't had that happen. I'm very grateful for that. And also, I'm hoping, I know you're not supposed to say it too soon, but I will be having my first repeat client, most likely this month. And I'm very grateful for that. So, there's just been, in reflection of everything that's happened going into year 3, I feel so much more confident than I did the other times. And there's also a part of me that I was on a call with, I'm part of an organization, AWA plus D, Association of Women in Architecture and Design. And at the end of every month, we have a small business club Zoom call. And there was a woman there last month, and she was like, oh, I'm in the early stages of, starting my business. So she was asking everybody, like, how did they start? And we were all kind of reflecting on, what it was like to start. And you're just like, wow, you're so proud of yourself, like how you were able to do all that. Like now I'm kind of like, okay, I feel comfortable, I'm confident. I know I'm not worried about how this next year is going to go, even though with like, you've got the economy, you've got, which we can talk about that, and clients ghosting you and things like that, and all this things happening. But I feel very confident where I am. And I've seen all of the hard work that I've been putting in the last 2 years. I don't want to say it's finally coming back to me, but I've really been working hard the last 2 years. And now I'm seeing how putting in that time has really helped me grow my business now.
Yeah, because you can't get repeat clients within the same month, not usually.
No.
So it takes
No.
time.
No. Yes.
Are there
Yes.
were there any projects you got initially that you just grabbed because you didn't have that experience and versus what you're working on now? Like what's that project type for you?
Oh, you will be humbled the first few projects that you get, because when you're starting off on your own, you're kind of getting the bottom of the barrel projects. Unless, I mean, you may get lucky and you may get like a remodel or something, or you may know someone who needs you, but really, you kind of say yes to every possible project at the beginning. So, my first 2 projects I signed up were deck repairs. Now, I was coming off of working at a firm that worked on multi-million dollar residential homes. So working on a deck repair was kind of like, now these deck repairs were on coastal homes. So I was still within like the world of where I wanted to work, but it was a deck repair. Which at first I was like, oh, this is kind of, small. But in that moment, when you're setting up your plotting system or because I work in CAD, so like your layer system, how do you want your drawings to look? You kind of want to start small because that way you can grow your systems and your standards. Excuse me, sorry. Sorry, it's so dry here. I'll try to jump in where I left off. So you want to learn all the standards and everything on how your project's going to go, what formats are you going to use. So it's good to start small. I'm no longer doing deck repair projects. I'm happy to share. I am doing, yeah, thank you. I'm doing remodels. ADUs are a big thing in California, accessory dwelling units. So I have one of those going on. I have one that was supposed to be an ADU, but due to local regulations, we're converting a garage into habitable space versus into an ADU for clients who want to age in place. So for their caregiver, they want to convert their garage into a unit for their caregiver. So I've got that project. I've got a few remodels. I have my biggest project under construction finally, which is a remodel of about a 1,400 square foot home. And although there's not much architecturally that's changing, there's a few architectural elements I got to design. And I'm also realizing my CA time, my construction admin time for a project like that, I'm now learning, because I've had, the deck repair. Yeah, you go to the site once or twice, right? It's a deck. You're not going to be checking it, constantly. But when a whole house is being remodeled and now you're in charge of all the decisions and so now I'm putting those systems into place on how am I going to update my drawings? How am I going to, update the contractor, my field reports? What does that all look like? So constantly learning, growing. Yeah, but I'm definitely not in the deck repair projects. And I'm also now have the ability to say no to projects similar scope of that. There's a recent project that came across my desk. I don't want to say I'm above it, but I don't want to do it because it's so small scale. And I now have the ability to say no to projects like that, like the size of a deck repair. And so I'm very grateful for that, that now I don't have to say yes to every project. I can say yes to projects that align with where I want to take my company.
Yeah, because there's a lot of business advice, especially when you start out, to kind of grab what you can, but
Yep.
don't put on your front page of your website things you
Oh, no.
don't want to continue doing work on. So I'm
Yes.
sure if I pulled up your website, I wouldn't see any deck repairs
No.
anywhere.
No. And that's a hard thing to do, especially at the beginning. And I'm glad you brought that up is, you want to show your work. And so, a lot of clients early on were like, well, can I see some of your work? And at my previous firm, I talked to my boss about it and I said, hey, can I show some work? But we didn't do renderings at that firm. So really it was just construction documents. And you show that to a client and they're like, well, that's great,
Yeah.
but I want to see a vision. Like I want to see a
It's not a
rendering.
pretty picture.
Exactly. So one thing to do too is I would do like a make-believe project. And so I would design a project, do a little rendering of it, hand sketch or in Photoshop or whatever in SketchUp, and put that on my website as my portfolio. So that is something, if you are listening and you're like, well, Katerina, I don't have anything. I don't have a portfolio. I'm just starting my own firm. Do a little fun sketch, do a little project, or take a project you did at another firm and do it in a different, do it how you want to do it. Maybe change a few
Hmm.
things, tweak a few things to your style. And then, you can just say this is just a schematic design. You don't have to share that this isn't under construction. You just be like, this is a concept plan. I have a project on my website of a kitchen that it's not a kitchen I'm actually working on. I just used a kitchen based off of a project I was working on, but another client wanted to see other kitchens I've done. So I, quickly put together something so I could have it for that presentation. But then I also put it onto my website so that you can see, different styles. It was more of like a mid-century modern kitchen. So yeah, there's definitely, you can have fun with it. Even if you don't have, like you're just doing deck repair projects, you can work on other stuff, during the other time, to build your portfolio.
Yeah, because I'm sure there's projects out there that everyone's worked on that it went a direction they didn't like, whether it
Mm.
be, the client directed it that way or
Mhm.
a senior designer wanted to go this direction, but it's different than what you would have done. There's so many ways and opportunities to take a look at projects and say, hey, if I could just do it the way I wanted, here's what I would do. And that showcases your design and your thought process
Mm.
with it too. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
and I know we haven't touched on an ebook you wrote
Mhm.
and the podcast. So I'm going to hit both of those. And then I want
Okay.
to get to your word of the year because you always do a word of the year diving in. And so there's a lot going on, which
Mhm.
goes right along with your word of the year. So you launched an ebook, The
Mhm.
Mindful Blueprint for Launching Your Architecture Firm. So I wanted to touch on that since we talked about launching a firm. So how did you decide you wanted to start the ebook and what information you pulled to create that?
So, yes, the ebook kind of came through. I was already starting to take some notes about, my process, what I was learning, what the steps I took, because I started noticing a lot of people were like, well, how did you do this? And how did you, and I started getting questions about, how did you set up a corporation? How did you set up a bank account? Like, there's all these things. And so I thought, well, why don't I make an ebook? I also wanted to kind of dip my toes in the world of passive income, making ebooks online. Like, can I do this? Do I know how to do this? That's a whole another world that I had to learn. And as you know, having digital products and marketing them and putting them online. And it's like, I was like, well, let's just try this. Because last year, my word of the year was create. So I'm like, oh, I'll just create this. So I created the ebook and I gave myself a month. I was like, I'm going to give myself a month to write it, edit it, market it, and post about it. So it was supposed to come out January of last year. about a week into that, I was like, this is absolutely impossible. Like, who was I? Who was I to make this? Now, thankfully, I hadn't announced it that I was going, and I said, I think I was working on it. So then I was like, well, maybe I'll do it by the end of February. And then I was like, nope, who are you kidding? So I was like, what about March? March is my birthday. I was like, okay. So I ended up launching it end of March. And it's essentially a workbook on different steps of how to start your own architecture firm. So the first part of the ebook, there's the first steps, which there's like the main pillars of starting your own firm is you need a plan. So I have you write out your 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan. And then I have you talk about your support system, finding a mentor. How do you talk about it with, who you're working for? Maybe you have to have that conversation. There's all these conversations you have to have. And then in like chapter 2 or section 2, I talk about, getting a corporation set up, finding a name, getting your, bank set up. You have to, if you want, you can have a business bank account. There's like all these things, setting up a website. Then there's the end is like, how do you, get a client? How do you set your hourly rate? Things like that. And it's in the shape of like a workbook because that's kind of how I went about it, where I was like, okay, well, now I have to focus on this activity. And so that's kind of how it's like a story of how you start your own business, essentially. And it was really fun putting together. It was very fun creatively. I found a template off of Creative Market. So I think I give a shout out to the woman who designed it. It was just so fun putting it together. And then came the time to launch. And as you know, launching a product, I am not a salesperson. I do not like selling stuff. It, to me, like even when you have to kind of sell yourself when you go to social, networking events and you're socializing, you're like, hey, I'm Katerina. This is my business. Here's what I do. I don't have that personality because for me, like even when I go shopping with friends and they're like, oh, should I get this? I'm like, well, you can get it if you want, don't get it if you don't want it. That's kind of the approach I have of like, well, if you're not really into it, don't get it. Like save your money and go somewhere else. And so that's very hard when you're trying to launch a product. So I ended up working with a business coach, Petya Kolebova, who is amazing. And she kind of helped me gain the confidence to launch the ebook. And so I launched the ebook, which was interesting within and of itself, learning how to put it on my website. How do people, download it? And then what should the price be? That was a whole exercise within and of itself. But yeah, so the ebook has been really fun to put together. And it's been something just kind of fun in the background. I actually had someone bought it this week and I was like, wow. And it's always interesting. I'm like, how did this person find me? Because at first, like friends were buying it, people I knew on Instagram. And now I'm like, wow, sometimes I'll just get an email like, woohoo, you got another sale. And I'm just like, wow, this is so great. Like, how did this person find me? I hope they find the book helpful. So it's been a really fun, creative process. Definitely like doing a digital form versus a physical product. I had an experience with a physical product last year, which I know, Caitlin, you bought the sweatshirt, the architect of your dreams sweatshirt, which I'll just touch on. That was a whole different experience than a digital product. I don't know if I'll ever go to a physical product again because there is so much that has to go with the packaging, which I totally messed up on. I bought packaging and I never checked to see if the sweatshirts fit into the packaging.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if yours arrived like scrunched up, like smushed in. I hope don't even try to remember. That's okay, great.
I had
Because
pregnancy brain then. I can't remember
good.
anything.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you don't remember it because I remember I was like, I got all the sweatshirts and I started sending them out and I was like, are you kidding me? You never even tried to put a sweatshirt in. And so like I think maybe like the extra small fit and maybe one person bought an extra small and that was like the only one that fit. And so there's just so much more that goes into a physical product than a digital product. So that was a whole learning curve, but it's kind of fun just to like dabble in this. You see so many people online doing ebooks and passive income and selling products. And so I now have such an admiration for those who do any launches because it's really hard work.
Yeah. And I know with my products, like I'm not a salesperson. My husband is. So I'll go to him and be like, here's how I want to do this. And then he's like, no, like you need to reframe all this. So I've definitely learned a lot about sales, but it's like after you launch something, I feel like I talk about it like 24/7 because you're trying to just let people know, and it takes like over 8 times of somebody reading something to even
Mhm.
think about clicking a link or checking things out. And then it's like if you put a link in emails, then you're trained don't click on email links because
Yeah.
it could mess up your computer. So it's hard to just be
Mhm.
able to launch something, talk about it, and then not feel like you're bugging people. It's like I just
Yes.
want to let you guys know it's here.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. No,
But
it's yeah. The bugging people, I know with like the sweatshirt when that came out because that was a limited time series only because it was limited because of the shipping and everything. Um, I was very like hesitant because I have a newsletter that comes out once a month where I just share what's going on with the business, and I only do it once a month because I know there's so many other companies that just drop emails into your inbox constantly. And every
mhm.
time, like I think I did one every other day of like, hey, don't forget about the sweatshirt and the, limited edition this. And then I was like, okay, well now like half the people on my newsletter have already bought this stuff. Like now I'm just bothering the other half. And I'm like, are they even reading it? And it's sometimes too with like the digital world, like you send something out like an email or a post or a reel and you're like now it's in this abyss and you're like are people actually resonating with it, is there you
Mhm.
don't really always get the feedback so you don't know if it's landing.
Yeah. Because it can definitely be hard, but
Yeah.
the spontaneous purchases are always fun.
Yes.
I know
Yes, they are.
I wrote a book for high school students wanting to study
Um,
architecture, and I don't really promote it. Like,
mm-hmm.
I need to figure out ways to promote it in an indirect way since it's going down to like high school students. Like,
Mm-hmm.
my LinkedIn following and Instagram are all current architects or
Mm.
senior professionals. So, but every once in a while, I get an Amazon ping that, hey, somebody purchased the book. I was like, oh, okay.
Nice.
I hope this helps.
Yeah, it's really sweet. And I think one thing, like thankfully you and I both have is our podcast, which I think is a platform that does easily allow us to market our products.
Yeah. And just letting people know who we are and
Hmm.
we're human, we're figuring things out.
Yes.
And I know with the podcast, are you year 4? Year 3?
You're year 4. Oh my
4.
gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
In September, end of September, beginning of October is my anniversary. So, yeah, I'll be celebrating 4 years, which is amazing. It aligns with my wedding anniversary. That's how I remember. So,
I think mine's right after my wedding anniversary now that I think of it.
there you go.
I'll
Yeah.
have to take a look. I started like randomly in the year. You would think you would start in like a January, so it all makes
Mm,
sense.
yeah.
But that's no fun.
All
Then you have
good.
to wait.
No. No. No, it's fun. Yeah, mine's always in September, I think is when I record my anniversary episode. Yeah. So, yeah, 4 years of From the Honeycomb.
And I know even the podcast has evolved over time. So do you
Mhm.
want to talk about how you've taken the podcast over time and
Of
changed it?
course. Of course. So it kind of goes back to right at the beginning of the episode. I mentioned, Vastu Shastra and my interest in Vastu Shastra. So that's really what started the podcast. Is I was really interested in what it was, and I'm like, well, how do I kind of make myself accountable studying about Vastu? So I was like, well, maybe I'll have a podcast. I'll talk about it, and so that's kind of where it started. I had some random like family guests on. Like if you were family, I was like, you're obligated to be a guest because I was so nervous to have guests on because I thought you had to pay people to come on your podcast. I don't think I've ever shared this anywhere, but I thought you had to pay to have people come on your podcast. And I was like, I have no funding to ask people to like be. So I just kept asking like friends. And then I was like, oh, people like actually want to come on a podcast for free and like promote their stuff. Like, and then once I got into that, I had more like random people on, mostly focused on women. I think because we are in like kind of a male dominated industry in architecture, I really wanted to have conversations with other women. And so that's kind of what I use the podcast for. And it's more of like a conversation of, I like having guests on talking about, their story and just, it's like having a cup of coffee with me, essentially, is what I'm trying to really focus it on. Is just, yeah, let's just talk about what your journey is, what you do. And it also gives everybody a platform to, share whatever it is that they're, launching, working on, or just their story. And so throughout the years, it's kind of evolved. I ended up having a few architecture guests on, probably my coming up into my second year of podcasting. And I was like, wow, like I really enjoy having women in architecture. And I started a women in architecture series every October where I highlight, it varies, but it's 4 episodes So various like for architects, female architects, or architect adjacent professions and things like that, and always have a theme. And so but then I was like, well, I also want to keep talking to women in architecture, not just in October. And so I've kind of through evolution of even my interests, obviously with Vastu kind of becoming a passion on like the side, I've left the Vastu Shastra topics and moved into entrepreneurship, moved into, focusing on, well, now I'm a woman who has my own business. I want to hear about not only other women in the architecture and adjacent industries who have their own business, but what about other women who started their own businesses? So it is kind of leading into women in entrepreneurship, but also like-minded women. I kind of just find women on Instagram and I'm like, oh, I really think you're really fascinating. Like, let's have a conversation. I had one guest earlier on this year who I actually met, was introduced to her by one of her clients who sat next to me on an airplane. And she was telling me about how she had just gone to her Ayurvedic like play. She has a place in Hawaii, in Oahu, where she has Ayurvedic practices you can go to and like retreats essentially. And I was like, wow, this sounds like so interesting. So I was like, hey, do you want to come on my podcast? I know we've never met. And she and I just had this amazing conversation, and her viewpoint on when you find something you're passionate about and then you turn it into a business, what does that mean? Because you have this passion, you love it, but now you also have to be a business owner. And how does that affect your passion? And just, there's different decisions you have to make. And so that was really interesting. So I don't know, it's kind of evolving. I've also taken a little bit of a step back this year with the podcast. I used to have a podcast episode every Friday. For almost 3 years, I had a podcast episode every Friday. There were a few spots where I, didn't, if I had an architecture exam or things like that, but it was a lot. So this year I've taken a step back. I have episodes kind of coming out just as I see fit, just organically. I set a time to record. I've also had a lot of things going on personally where I just haven't been able to be present with the podcast. And honestly, it's been so much more enjoyable where I'm looking at it as more of a quality over quantity. So I'm looking for good quality conversations versus the quantity of you have to have a podcast episode every Friday. And I have found that to be so much more fulfilling with the podcast.
Yeah, because I know there's so many people that tell you to post on social media every day, stick on this schedule, send out a newsletter every week at a minimum. And it's like, sometimes it's just information overload, but then also too much on the creator itself. And it can be a lot. And to touch on your podcast pricing, I had somebody reach out to me to be on their podcast. I know it's a bigger national one. And they wanted me to pay them to be on their podcast. It was like the opposite. Like the guest pays them money. And I'm like, nah, I'm good. I have enough friends that have podcasts that I can go on for free and just have a chat.
Yeah. Interesting.
But I was like, I don't know if I'd get any guests if I said, hey, pay me $300 to be on my show.
No, I mean, that would be great. That would be great. That would definitely help, like, make some money. I mean, maybe that's, but I think too, that also ends up, you only find certain type of people then. And I think having it accessible, like you and I, our podcasts are more accessible. I think you get so many more interesting people that wouldn't possibly have the opportunity to come on the podcast.
Yeah, and more genuine conversations, because I think that's where we both hit, just trying to have a coffee chat with somebody, because it's always learning through others and what they've experienced and what they're doing. And if it's always just business oriented, like super money focused business oriented, like it doesn't resonate as well, I think. But
it's very transactional. And it's not, I don't know, I feel like I sometimes look at there's really big podcasts I listen to. And now knowing what it takes to make a podcast episode happen, I wonder exactly, like, did that guest have to pay to come on? But, and like there's the big celebrity podcasts and like they pay for people to come on. And that's a whole thing. And it's a different tier of podcasting, I'll say. I definitely like our more niche. I think we're more approachable in that way too. And I think we're more, not I want to say human, but like our listeners can resonate more with the conversations and with the people that we have on. I think it's a different conversation that we can have than some of the big podcasts.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned your word last year was creative, and this year it's slow down.
Yes.
So why did you choose that word for this year, and how's it going being halfway through the year?
Great question. And I should probably just tag this podcast episode because I usually do a check-in at the halfway through the year of like how my word's going, and I haven't done that. So I may do like just a little summary here, but I chose the word slow down. Well, let me back up. I choose a word of the year every year because I heard about it a couple years ago, and it just makes sense for me to have a theme of the year based on what do I want to accomplish this year. I've had the word surrender, create last year was a big, I wanted to create so much with the ebook and create my business. I had one year, I think it was hustle, because I knew I wanted to start my own business. And this year, slow down just kind of really resonated with me. So towards the end of every year, I start to kind of see like, okay, how did this year go? What do I want to invite into my life the next year? And at the end of last year, I was really burnt out between a lot of personal things happening. We had a lot of deaths in the family, older people, just grandparents. It was just a very hard personal year on top of, working on my business, then work. There was a lot going on. I had podcast episodes every Friday, and I just started to really just feel like, okay, I am burning out. Next year, I just want to slow down. I want to slow down. I want to take things easy. I don't need to be hustling. I started saying no to so many things. I knew I was going to pivot with the podcast, have less episodes. And I said, I feel like I really need to just slow down this year. I definitely slowed down January, February. Business was slow as well, just coming off of the holidays. Then nobody knew what was happening with the administration. Could they take on big projects or not? And so at the beginning of the year, I was definitely slow. And then March, April, I would say I was not slowing down. And I think that I kind of forgot about my word of the year. And now I'm tuning back into that as summer's coming up and as I'm seeing my workload. I keep remembering, okay, don't forget your word of the year, slow down. And I have it written on a board, like right next to my desk. And my husband will sometimes point to it when he's like, you're freaking out. Like, I'll be like spiraling, and he'll just point to the board and he'll be like, that's your word of the year, right? Slow down. I'm just like, that's right. Like, so saying no to a lot of things has also been so empowering. I would also say I've set a lot of boundaries with a lot of people in my life, whether it's friends, family, work people. I've definitely have just really slowed down, and it's been really nice. I would say I'm coming out of a period where I wasn't slowing down, and I noticed that I started to feel burnt out again, and I'm like, it's just a good reminder. So it's going okay. It's been a there's been months where I'm slowing down, there's months where I'm not, but I'm definitely leaning into summer with slowing down and just, you know, everything's going to get done when it gets done. That's a huge lesson I'm kind of relearning of don't stress. I always make all of my deadlines. Like even if I have a big list, I'm going to get it done. It's going to get done. And if it doesn't get done, unless it's something like life or death, it's okay. And
Mm-hmm.
it'll just get figured out. And so that's something I'm definitely leaning into more and more throughout the year.
Yeah, and having that reminder too, because as much as people try to do New Year's resolutions in January, and they always say by week 2, everybody, like half the people have broken their resolution. But sometimes it's good to have that word written down and keep it broad enough that you can take a look at it from different avenues, and having that reminder on your board to just, hey, what are you about? What are you doing? And have that check in, because I know I watch what you do and you're as ambitious as I am with things. I'm like, oh, Katerina's doing this. I got to keep up with that. And you were doing so many like stories on Instagram, and I'm like, I don't know how she's doing it. I'm like, I can't keep track of these other things.
Yeah.
And I also hit burnout with the episodes last year. Because so like I've been watching your slowdown word, because my year, I guess I restarted my year in March because my daughter was born in March. So everything was building up to that March date that I didn't find like January a new start to the year. It was like, you know, you're getting to the end of the year because of the time of life I was in. But I was recording podcast episodes like 3 a week throughout the fall to like build up that content because I'm like, I gotta be there for my listeners and have stuff and content ready every week. And I have people say, I can't believe you're doing all these recordings and you have a newborn or you're a week from your due date. And I'm like, I did these a while ago. Does everybody like not realize you can record and schedule things?
Yeah. No,
But
I admire you on how much you've been able to show up, because speaking of Instagram, that was another thing where I burned out, and I admire you for you're still doing. I used to do Happy Podcast Fridays, I think it was, and like I know you do your Happy Podcast Thursdays, and it's like, and that's something too, is like you're constantly, there's so much content to go out, and between like newsletters, podcast episodes, the scheduling, it's just like the amount of work behind the scenes to when you have that final product ready to share with people. It's a lot, and I've kind of taken a break from Instagram. Had some more personal things happen at the beginning of the year where I just didn't feel like showing up to Instagram. And also, I will say, I have so much more time now that I'm not on Instagram as much. Like, I was like, one day I got so much accomplished, and I was like, why did I get that so much accomplished? It's because I wasn't on Instagram stories.
yeah.
So it definitely, it has, and I mean, some days I'm like, oh, I need to share. And there's so many days where I'm like, I wish I had shared this, and then I just forget about it. Because I've taken a step back. And slowing down too is like, because the algorithm is changing and there's constantly something going on, and you're just like, and I've tried to figure out the algorithm, and then now I'm just like, forget the algorithm. There's just so much.
Yeah.
And then again, remembering, slow down. So posting less, but like last month I posted 2 episodes, and I've had one of the best months in a very long time. And I've had probably one of the top listened months in a year. And so it goes to show that I'm going off of that quality over quantity, and I'm seeing that people are resonating with that. And I have 156 episodes, so there's a lot of content to listen to if you're new to the podcast.
Yeah. And I think it's important to even, I guess it goes on the track of slow down, but to like not watch the water boil. Like whenever you're posting, like when I was posting all the time, I felt like I had to watch the data all day.
Yeah.
Like even while drafting and working, and it's like get to the end of the meeting and then I check my phone like, hey, do I have different hits or likes or what's going on? But then when I post less, I don't watch the numbers as much. And then I get more numbers and reactions. Like I think it was a couple weeks ago, my LinkedIn exploded for a post, and I'm like, oh, what did I even have scheduled posting? Like I didn't pay attention to it. I'm like, why are my numbers through the roof? And take a look. I'm like, all right, I'm saving that one and we'll archive that just to be able to repost. But it was like that mental shift in trying to recenter, because it just got exhausting to constantly be watching it or thinking, what can I, like you put work into something and then you don't get any reaction. Then you just feel crappy about yourself.
Yeah, no, that's hard. And it's a one theme I'm noticing is, I don't chase, I attract. And that's something, I don't know, that might be my like word of the year next year or something, or sentence of the year next year, is like, but I'm noticing with work, like I signed the 2 projects. I stopped focusing on work and being like, oh my gosh, I have to get a project. And then it's like the moment you let go, all of a sudden this abundance comes in. And like you just said, you stopped watching and like, oh my gosh. And I think sometimes, and I'm working through this of like just trusting the process and just trusting that whatever's working out is like the best case scenario. Like you just have to trust, and like kind of when you try to like control an outcome, I think the more energy you put into that, then like I believe in the universe, so it's whatever you believe in, God, creator, universe. Like I think if you let go of that control, like then you let that source of energy take control, and then you can focus on something else, and then that abundance comes back to you in a way, is what I've been noticing.
Yeah. And so there's definitely been a theme this year of you taking breaks and learning to say no, whether it be to projects or what you say no eating up your time. So how has that changed your energy and stress level? I know you mentioned you went up and down, but how are you recentering? Do you have advice for others trying to recenter and rehone?
That's a great question. I think if you're trying to recenter, rehone, and you're just like, I'm at the end of my bandwidth, like I just don't have the bandwidth for anything else, I would take a look at maybe even write down. A big component in writing things down is write down everything you have going on in your life, and then what can you take away? Like what isn't necessary? social media, maybe, unless social media is your form of income. I don't know. But for me, social media is not a form of income, and it was becoming stressful. I was like, okay, that can go on the back burner. Okay, what else? Okay, the podcast. I love the podcast, but right now I need to take a break. I can't show up every week. Okay, great. And then as you start to chip things away and you're just like, "Oh, guess what? Life still keeps moving forward even though I'm not getting to all of these things. It's okay." And people were so excuse me, let me see. Excuse me. People were so understanding when I messaged on, I think I did a story on Instagram, like, hey, I'm taking kind of a hiatus, just, the amount of messages that were flooded in, I think it's like the most reaction I've gotten to anything is people were just like, oh my gosh, good for you. Take care of your mental health. Like, people get it. And so I think that's something like we kind of briefly have talked about, like, yeah, you're creating, you're like, is it resonating with people? I think too, people understand that you are a human behind the brand, behind everything, and so it's normal and it's okay for you to take that break and that hiatus if you need to. So my advice would just be like, it's okay to take a break from whatever it is that isn't serving you in the moment. Obviously, like, yes, would I like to take a 6-month hiatus from work and life and just be in like Bali? Absolutely. But I cannot take that right now. But I can try to carve out those little like moments into my life that allow me to, slow down, recenter. So what does that mean? I definitely, my weekends now, I try to be off social media. I try to not do any work. Sometimes there are weekends where I might have to do a little work to catch up on things throughout the week, but that means during the week, I'll take a little bit of slowing down time. I'm also cutting off, when I stop and start work. I have my designated time, which is when you're working for yourself and working from home, that can be sometimes hard to, make that transition of, okay, now I'm off work. So there's definitely a balance, but my advice would just be, yeah, take a look at what is everything that's going on in your life and what can you take away? Because I think you'll surprise yourself on there's more you can take off your plate than you think that you need to have on your plate. And the world just keeps spinning. It's okay. You need to take care of yourself first. It's the whole, you need to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before helping others. And I think that's really key to just being able to sustain yourself.
Yeah. And it's sad that we have to say put your health first.
Yes.
But I feel like I have to keep saying that to architects that,
Yes.
hey, sometimes you just got to put we would say pencil down, but mouse down, I guess. Yeah. But you just got to step away. Or if I say, hey, go take a walk at lunch and somebody's like crazy working to a deadline, they're like, I can't take 30 minutes off. I'm like, yes, you can.
Yeah.
Like, you're not like doing open heart surgery on somebody right now. You can take a 30-minute break and try to figure out what the contractor actually needs rather than you overdrawing something for no reason. And then you're just exhausted.
Exactly. I think I'm going to do a plug for Morgan Chihuahua, the healthy architect. She is someone who I would recommend if you are facing burnout or anything like that, check out her content. She is someone who I've had her on my podcast, and she is someone who introduced me to taking walks in the middle of the day. And I think that's something too you forget is like when you're like, no, I have to be at the office, I have to be at my desk, my boss needs to see that I'm working. Okay, it's okay. You can go take a walk, a 30-minute walk. I wish I knew that when I was working at a 9 to 5, that it's okay to go out for a walk. Just take a break. Like, just take a minute, because I think I would have lunches at my desk and just being like, I have to keep working. And I think that was so unhealthy. And I feel like I'm in a much healthier mindset when it comes to work now that I work for myself, because it goes back to those boundaries that I've set, and I really focus. If like there's a stressful moment, I'm like, okay, let's go take a lap around, the neighborhood. And then you kind of come back clear-minded. And that's something that Morgan really helped me learn.
Yeah, and definitely recenter yourself, but now it's a different set of boundaries for you.
Yeah.
So you're your own boss.
Exactly.
Tell your boss you need a
Yeah,
break.
exactly. Yeah. And my boss is usually pretty okay with it. So yeah.
And I know you're also co-director of programs at AWA+D that you mentioned earlier. So what's it like being the co-director of programs and balancing everything? And is there anything exciting you guys are working on?
Yeah, so it's definitely been a position that is a lot more work than I anticipated. And I've actually become now the program, so no longer the co-program. That was a recent development. And so I've taken on coordinating events for the organization. And I have been part of the organization for about 2 years now. And as of last fall, I became the programs director. And I was always so excited about the events we were hosting because our organization, we're mostly based in LA. Yes, I'm in Orange County, so I do go to some of the events in LA, but it's mostly around LA events. And the amount of work it takes to put together an event, again, it goes back to like, I admire now and I get why certain events take so much work to put together. You have to contact the place, or like we do a lot of architectural historic tours of homes. So, coming up in, like, I know this episode will air after, but in July, we'll have a private tour of the Gamble House, which is a kind of green and green artisan craftsman house in Pasadena. And just setting up that tour and the emails and the coordination, and you have to get approval, and we have board meetings once a month, which has been interesting. Is I've never been part of a board, and so you don't realize, like, before you make certain decisions you have to get board approval. And so it's been very interesting kind of to understand how a non-for-profit organization works as well, because we are a non-for-profit organization. And so it's just been really, really interesting. I am someone who loves planning social events, so this position really aligned with what like I like to do. We've had salsa dancing nights I think every January we have like a New Year's party, and so we did salsa dancing, which is super fun. We go to the women's soccer games, Angel City. We have that coming up in September. I guess I can share that one. So if you're in the LA area, I think September 1st, it's in the works right now, but Angel City women's soccer game, we have events like that. Our last year, our annual party was at the Rivian showroom in Venice Beach, and you got to test drive Rivians. So, like, we do super fun non-architectural stuff, but we also have a platform where if you're studying for your architecture exams, we have a weekly Zoom group you can join. If you're a small business owner, we have our meetings at the end of every month, and which I'm a part of that. We have our symposium. So at the end of January, or at the end of June, we're having our yearly symposium, which is like a great conference all day, just to be able to coordinate or talk, network with other women in the industry. So the position has been really interesting because I didn't realize how much time it would take. And so that's another reason. I've also had to say no to a few things. But it's been really fulfilling, and it's been filling up my social social cup of networking, going to events, but also going to fun events where the people, well, really it's mostly women, are in the same organization as, or same industry as me, so we can talk about, how are things going with the business, how are people feeling, how is the work coming in. And then also we have fun social events. And so it's kind of been a fun, it doesn't always feel like work because the group is so amazing, everybody is so great. So it's just been a really fun organization to be a part of.
Yeah, and circling back on the business side of it,
Mhm.
because you're a sole proprietor, you don't have
Mhm.
any staff.
Yes.
It's almost that connection as if you were working in an office to go to social events,
Yep.
expand your own network. What are you doing? What's going on? If you need any help, then you have people to reach out to.
Yeah. No, it's definitely, I think I never hadn't thought of it that way, but it is. You feel less alone. And I will
Mhm.
say, since starting my own company, I feel so much less alone than I did when I used to work for another company, because the amount of, and I would say a lot of it has to do with the social media and stuff, but the community I've been able to form on Instagram, and then through the podcast, and then now through AWA plus D, I feel like I have such a great support network of, if I have a question or I need help with something or I'm curious about something, there are so many people willing to help. And I think, just to kind of circle back to, if you are starting your own architecture business, there are so many people out there, me included, who do genuinely want you to do well and start your own business, because there are so many people who helped me start my own business. And that's why I even created the ebook, is to help kind of give back and be like, well,
Mhm.
if, so many people helped me, I've done all this research, now kind of making it easier for you, here it is in this workbook. Because I think we can all help each other, there's enough to go around. It doesn't have to be competitive. And I think, yeah, it's just been a really, I feel very supported in the organizations and people in my life right now.
Yeah, I feel like the smaller firm community that I've even just talking to on the podcast, it's
Mhm.
everybody is there for each other and willing to
Mhm.
help. And hey, do you need help with this, or do you need have any questions over here? Whereas sometimes when I talk to the larger firms, they're a
Mhm.
lot more competitive on things because they're always just trying to beat each other out for the big projects.
Yes.
But it's like when you get those small firm or solo entrepreneurs, like everybody's just so open arms, ready to
Mhm.
help if somebody's looking to go off on their own. And
Yes.
so,
No,
and I,
absolutely.
and I always get the AWA plus D emails. I don't know
Oh,
why or when I signed up. It had to have been years ago, but I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm nowhere near California. But I like seeing all the different events and things going on, to
Oh.
what people are doing, how to help others, and what people are looking for in
Mhm.
terms of those support groups and conversations.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. And we do have a few virtual events. We do try to sprinkle in a few virtual events just to bring in other people. Speaking of Morgan Chihuahua, we had her do a 3-part series earlier this year. And so we do try to also do virtual events to get people from other places. I know our small business club, we've had a growth in that group, and we're not all from California. I think we had one woman from Canada join us a few times, a woman from Michigan, a woman from I think Georgia, and so we've had quite a few people. So you definitely don't have to be in LA to join the group, but it has just been really good, and it is really affordable. It is more affordable than AIA, which really helps.
yeah, I know that's like an arm and a leg
Yes, it
to do
is.
that organization. But I always like wrapping out my podcast with this final question,
Mhm.
and it's, what advice do you have for young professionals just starting their careers?
Man, if you are just starting your career, I would say I know a lot of the young professionals now. I think there's a lot of focus on having the coolest rendering and having the coolest, like being able to do the coolest rendering. And yes, that's great, but my advice would be is get into a firm where you can get experience doing construction documents, going to site visits, learning about the full process of, from design to construction, what that looks like, because it's great that you can make a cool rendering, but and speaking as someone who has their own firm, when if and when I would hire someone, I'm not looking for if you have the coolest rendering and what you can do, but can you put together a construction document set? Do you understand how to detail? And because honestly, AI can do a rendering for me at this point. And so that's also something too to think about if you're a young professional and you see AI coming in, learn it, learn how to use it, put it in your toolbox, because it's something I think in the future we're all going to focus on. Having AI, AI is just going to become another software program. It's not going to replace us. I don't see it replacing us, but get comfortable and learn that you're going to have to adapt in the industry. So but get into a firm that can help you kind of see everything, see site visits, like I said, detailing, because I think that'll help you become very valuable to a firm when you start applying. And when it comes to the exams, I know those can be really daunting, especially coming out of architecture school. I know I had to take a break after architecture school to just like take a breather and then be like, okay, now let me get onto the exams. I would say take the exams when you feel like you're ready. There are so many incredible support networks online now these days, and courses you can take to help you with the exams. So take them when you feel like you're ready, but don't stress about everything. It'll all happen when it's supposed to happen.
Yeah. And both of those are great advice. Like,
Oh,
I know
thank
I
you.
always tell people to like go take the exams as fast as possible, because now with a newborn, I don't know how people study with like infants at home. So I give everybody
Oh,
a lot of credit that do the
yeah.
exams while having a family. But so much of my career was on a job site, and it was,
Hmm.
you don't learn how details come together till you see it in
Hmm.
person, in real life. You can touch it, you can have conversations with superintendents. Like, I always like
Yeah.
asking them, how would you detail it? Like, if this
Hmm.
detail's not going to work, this is the goal I'm trying to achieve for the client, how would you approach it? And you can learn so much from the
Hmm.
superintendents and the subcontractors on different ways to think about it based on how
Hmm.
it's actually constructed rather than the 2D drawing.
Oh, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head with that, because I was recently at the one project that we're in CA right now, and the interior designer came up to me. She's like, "You're the first architect who has been this involved during construction." And I was like, what? I'm like, this is like basic. Every firm I've ever worked at, we've been on the job site. Like, this is how I learn. She's like, every architect I know, just they get you to permit and then like wipe their hands
Mm-hmm.
clean. And I'm like, yeah, but how do you know if what you designed works? And I
Yeah.
think too, being vulnerable to ask the questions to the superintendent, same thing. I asked my GC, I said, here's this really cool window I want to, bay window I want to design. I said, here are the details. Does this even work? Like, can you
Yeah.
even build this? Now, thankfully, my husband's a GC, so I do run a lot of ideas past him, because I'll be like, how would you design it? But I think that's too, there's a gap where architects sometimes are just with architects and want to focus on, okay, cool designs. Okay, but at the end of the day, the general contractor is your end user. You need to make sure your drawings make sense to them, not just to the city and the client. So, yeah, I think educating yourself by asking those questions is going to make you so much more valuable too, and you're going to learn so much more.
Yeah. Let's create cool designs that can actually be constructed.
Yeah. What a
It's
concept.
yeah, novel concept. Maybe we should teach that in school.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother conversation too, for sure.
But I wanted to thank you so much, Katerina, for coming on the podcast again. If listeners want to find you or ask questions, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
So the best way to get hold of me is on Instagram at From the Honeycomb Podcast. Although I may not be posting a lot, I still do check like every day, just to see what's going on. But that's the best way to reach me in my DMs. I'm pretty active there. And then, yeah, if you're interested in the podcast, From the Honeycomb Podcast, it's on all major streaming platforms. And I have a monthly newsletter that you can sign up on through the link in my Instagram. And that I just kind of give an update, kind of a behind the scenes of what's going on in business, lessons I've learned. And I think I share a little bit more than I do on Instagram, because it's a smaller platform, my newsletter. I see who gets it, so I know who I can share stuff with. Because, like, for example, I had a potential lawsuit last year, and I talked about that in my newsletter, for example. And that's something, so I definitely, if you want to hear more about like the ins and outs of having a business, definitely be sure to subscribe to my newsletter as well.
Yeah, and I'll grab the newsletter link too and put it in the show notes, just so it's one less step everybody has to take if they want to see what's going on.
Good. Thank you.
Yep. But thanks again, Katerina, for taking the time to speak with me.
Of course. Always a pleasure, Caitlin.
I hope you enjoyed our discussion today. Learn some advice to take with you and see how our industry is all tied together to create the world around us. Check out the description below for any links or resources we discussed. If you liked the episode, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up and leave a comment below. It really helps others be able to discover this resource and support finding that career path that best works for them. If you know someone that has inspired your own career that you'd like me to interview, let me know in the comments below, or you can reach out to me via my website or LinkedIn. I'd be happy to share their story or your own. Thank you again, and I cannot wait for the next career story I get to share with you next week.